Welcome to week 135 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 654, which originally aired Monday, February 23rd, 1987. Mason acts weird and gets drunk. Victoria wonders if he's having second thoughts. But he says he just gets that way some days. So I don't know if this is a new thing they're doing. I know they haven't really properly done an alcoholism story with Mason.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably at some point that could happen. So I wonder if this is something like that, or if he was just being weird that day, or what. They booked the chapel in Carmel for March 15th, 1987, which, by the way, is a Sunday. And when Cece hears the wedding was delayed, he accuses Mason of not caring about Eden. This causes both Mason and Sophia to get angry with Cece. Sophia tells Cece that all he does is use people, and Cece says if people don't want to do something, they should just push back. Sophia visits Victoria to apologize for the cold reception at yesterday's dinner party, and Victoria tells Mason it would be easier if she just left town. I feel like based on past performance, that's not going to happen. In fact, the episode ends with them saying, let's get married as soon as possible. So I don't know if that means waiting till March 15th or if they are going to trek down to City Hall or Guadalajara or something.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. I can certainly see Victoria's apprehension. She hasn't gotten a great reception from Mason's family so far, and of course the reasons behind the marriage are a little bit, murky as well. We still don't know if there's been anything more promised to Mason, so we'll see.
I mean, Victoria's pretty savvy about what's going on. Mason said he was going for a walk to clear his head, but really he went to the Capwell mansion, and Victoria knew right away that's where he was going, and that he probably saw Cece, and she just basically tells him that. So I don't think, other than the fact that Sophia, didn't mention anything about the money Mason was offered, the rest of their conversation was stuff that didn't come as a surprise to Victoria, that Cece is really pushing for this to happen quick, entirely for Eden's sake. And Victoria doesn't have any delusions about that. But I wonder if the thing about the money comes out that Mason hasn't said to her, I wonder if, that will annoy her in some way. Perhaps after they're married.
Mm-hmm.
CC finds out that Gina bought $25,000 worth of the Acme stock that he's been touting. But he doesn't know where she got the money. He decides to buy a lot of the stock himself to jack up the price so that if Gina wants to buy more, she will have no option but to steal more money from him. Gina tells Keith she's decided she can just transfer more money from Cece's account to hers, and then Keith can just send his guy in again to wipe the computer. Keith, of course, is once again warning her that she's going to end up in San Quentin. Does that house both men and women? I don't know. We know Joe Perkins was there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Gina tells Mason that sooner or later he'll come back to her. Gina suggests throwing a bridal shower for Victoria and lists off people she can invite. Mason warns her to stay away from Victoria. So this is actually something I hadn't thought of. Like, we had thought of, an impediment to Victoria and Mason being happy might be, Eden or Cece's money. It never occurred to me that Gina might actually be a thorn in their side, since she's so busy being a thorn in Cece's side. So this is something that they could really ramp up, depending on how crazed Gina gets once she's finally been kicked out of the Capwell mansion.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's trying to maintain this hold over Cece, and she's also sleeping with Keith and trying to maintain a hold over him. But she seems to really want Mason, at least available to her, above all else.
So I think the sooner Mason and Victoria tie the knot, the better for them. Otherwise, Gina might come up with some blackmail on Mason to make him marry her. You know, we know it's clearly not beyond her to do that.
However, she can't really be married to Mason and Cece at the same time, so...
I think she was just hoping for a swap when the last 2 months of the contract ends. Gina tries to sell some of her jewelry to a fence, and she gets arrested, as does the fence, and Keith has to bail her out. So I don't know if she did anything illegal, but it was all very suspicious that she was using a fence and not another, normal route of selling jewelry. It's funny that when the guy offered her $10,000 for her jewels, she said that wasn't enough. He goes, oh, well, maybe you should try fencing them at Tiffany's then. Kelly and Jeffrey are making out like mad in the submersion tank room when Clint Howard walks in. Jeffrey says, oh, we're here for the sensory deprivation tank. And Clint Howard says, you didn't seem to be deprived of anything. He calls campus security because he, I think, has recognized the two wanted people on the poster. Cruz and Eden get wind of that call, and Cruz knows a shortcut to the sensory deprivation room, and they get there quite a lot ahead of the security guard. They happen to be with a security guard when the call comes in because he doesn't recognize them, and he actually calls them on their credentials. But Cruz kind of bluffs him by saying, "Oh yes, so-and-so hired me, and I used to be his boss when we were at the police department together or something." So. But anyway, that security guard takes the long route to the sensory deprivation tank. Cruz and Eden have time to switch places with Kelly and Jeffrey in the tanks and send them out in their guard costumes. So by the time Keith bursts in and thinks he's got them, he finds it's Cruz and Eden in the tanks, which of course annoys him. He demands they be arrested, but the student in the white coat who's running this lab today says, oh, they're on our volunteer list. They haven't done anything wrong, and you're disrupting a scientific study. So Keith is once again thwarted in his attempts to get Cruz Castillo. Keith says, oh, how long is this lab for? And they say 2 hours. He goes, well, make sure they stay in here the whole 2 hours. I'm going to post a guard. So this actually could backfire on Cruz and Eden, keeping them out of the campus for 2 whole hours, unable to help Kelly and Jeffrey. But they take the time to have the same kinds of fantasies that Kelly and Jeffrey had while in the tanks. And when they come out, the students gives them some forms to fill in and says, make sure you fill out in great detail all of your fantasies. Eden wonders later to Cruz, what about those fantasies? Are you going to write them down, and can I see them? And Cruz says, I'm going to live them. We're going to get married as soon as Kelly's free. So what are the odds on Cruz and Eden getting married in the near future?
Well, I feel like they will get married at some point, probably in a big, lavish wedding with on location, which doesn't happen very often anymore. But I think it might be a little while in the future. I mean, they've had 2 informal weddings, haven't they? Where they just kind of committed to each other. Yeah,
that was probably to tide the fans over.
Yeah.
Because they know that probably Victoria's Secret will come out just at the wedding, as these things often do.
Yeah, so I feel like when they do finally tie the knot, it'll be a big production, probably in the middle of sweeps.
And it's February now, which is sweeps, so yeah. I guess the May sweeps. May is usually when they have big soap weddings.
I wouldn't expect it within the next few weeks, let me put it that way.
So we've got, how many different couples do we have that could be getting married in May? We've got Cruz and Eden, we've got Kelly and Jeffrey, though that seems rushed. Cece and Sophia, because he should be free by then. Ted and Haley, Jake and Haley. Who else? Keith and Gina. So we've got quite a few potential couples. Santana and Brick, Warren and Jane, Carolyn and someone, Speaking of soap opera traditions, we've been commenting on Days of Our Lives how few extras there are. There are about 6 extras, and they all have different wigs and hats, and it's really obvious. Especially the one tall guy, everyone recognizes him all the time. And I was finally getting back to viewing my Another World episodes that AOL Video had put online about 15 years ago that I had downloaded but never gotten to. And we're in December of 1980 right now. And today I watched a hospital scene that had at least 15 different extras wandering around in the background. They had doctors and nurses. And last week at the casino, there was at least a dozen patrons in the background, and then half the cast was at a party across town. They used to just have more money even just for the mundane things like extras back then, I guess. Let alone the lavish weddings that we saw in the 80s. So it's, I think some of the diminished extras and things came about during COVID, but I feel like, even though that penny pinching is on the screen nowadays on Days of Our Lives.
Yes, every once in a while on Days of Our Lives, which is the one Misha mainly follows now. But even on some of the others, you'll get a flashback scene, and it'll be something from the 80s or early 90s, and everything is just so much more lavish, and it's usually got a location shot. It's amazing how much that aspect of soap operas has changed since then.
Mm-hmm.
Even quite a well-financed one like Beyond the Gates, which is quite new, which has beautiful sets, but they don't seem to do a lot of location work.
And the set seems to be a lot smaller, or not as deep. We saw that walk through behind the scenes of Days of Our Lives a year or two ago, and it's shocking how narrow from front to back the sets actually are. The camera kind of makes them look bigger, but they're like these little alcoves. There are very few actually large rooms, for any of those locations.
Now, you've actually seen a few Santa Barbara alumni rewatching those old episodes. I know I've heard Judith McConnell's voice a few times in the background as you've been watching them, and I think that we actually saw Nicholas Coster in an early one as well.
Yeah, I realized I hadn't watched the handful of episodes and clips from the 60s and 70s that are available on YouTube. I had done the 60s the last year or two ago at Christmas. I noticed I hadn't checked off any of the 70s ones, so I've been working through those. And I think 73 or 74, Nick Coster was in a scene with Susan Sullivan as Lenore Curtin. And then we saw one brief clip of, I think he plays Ada's brother, Sam Lucas. Maybe it's not Ada's brother. And maybe that's not his name. But anyway, Dr. Renfro from Santa Barbara. So those are the two I've seen in those older ones. I'm still working my way through 1976 right now, so maybe we'll see someone else. But it's interesting on the other, like our other nighttime shows, the Canon, etc. It's like the CCs that we see the most.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly and Jeffrey, dressed as guards, hide in the office of Dr. Charles Marcus, who promptly walks in and finds them, and recognizes Kelly as C.C. Capwell's daughter. He calls Keith Timmons and tells him to meet him in 1 hour for information as to the whereabouts of Kelly and Jeffrey. He then visits Cruz and Eden, pretending to be their doctor, and tells them that he's made arrangements for the Capwell family to see Kelly. So he is an ally of the Capwells who will be helping facilitate this meeting. And
it would be interesting to know. We haven't, as far as I know, heard of him before, so it'd be interesting to know what his relationship is with CC.
Mm-hmm. Wonder if he needs a donation to his department in the near future once he's helped Kelly. And that is it for this Monday episode. And we had a full cast credits, and the normal cast was the same as last time. No new additions. Obviously there aren't any, and no one else has left the show. So that's good to know. Lab man is Clint Howard. Lab assistant was Carlos La Camara. So I think maybe that was the guy who, told Keith Timmons that they were registered for the study. Virgil Leeds is John Gallucci, and Virgil Leeds was the fence that Gina tried to sell her jewels to. Dr. Marcus was played by Michael Fairman, who looked very familiar. And if you look on his IMDb, he has a lot of credits. His last credit was in 2023, so presumably he's still working. Surprised, because he looked so familiar that most of his appearances were just one or two, episodes of things. There were only a couple shows that he's done longer, another soap and some other shows that we hadn't watched. But, Anyway, Michael Fairman. And Campus Guard was played by Darren Erickson. Of course, that's the guy who told Cruz and Eden, hey, where's your ID? I don't recognize you. So we'll be back for the Tuesday episode. We'll see you after we watch episode 655 of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
We're here for the sensory deprivation experiments, obviously.
Well, that's supposed to be done in the tank. And it didn't look like your senses were too deprived when I walked in here. What the hell are you doing?
I'm trying to get rid of my deep-seated aggression.
Why now?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 655 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, February 24th, 1987. Haley explains to Ted that she was thinking of helping Jake buy that horse, maybe by going in on it with him or something like that. Ted comes up with the idea of selling it to him on the installment plan. He suggests, coming from Haley, he may accept this idea, so Haley suggests it to Jake, and Jake freaks out. He gets very angry about being offered charity, which is kind of goofy because it was clear it was a loan. So he's got some issues. He's taken over Gus's issues, I think.
Yeah, because I think charity would be if they just gave him the pony.
Yeah.
They actually are making him pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could charge interest if he's really feeling that strongly about it.
Yeah. Then Mr. Abernathy arrives. Have we seen him before?
I don't know.
He looked like he should be Mr. Abernathy. So he gives Ted a promotion to co-head groom or something, which, Jake's been there, I think they said 7 years. And then he offers Ted the job of taking over the new batch of horses, Arabians, was it, that are coming in next week. And Jake has been waiting for this for a long time. And so Jake is very, very angry at this. Later we see him get very drunk, and he smashes a bottle against the wall of the stables. We don't know where Jake lives. He's always in the stables. So.
But we knew his dad was abusive, so it's possible that Jake learned some very poor ways of dealing with anger.
Yeah. Now, what I'm thinking is they're piling all these things on Jake, like two indignities in one episode. I feel like the goal is to build him up to something so that something happens. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what that is. Mason pulls some strings and gets the chapel in Carmel tomorrow. Victoria wants to tell Mason's family. She says Sophia deserves not to be kept in the dark. But Mason doesn't want to tell anyone, really. Eden says to, I think, Cece and Sophia, she feels there's something wrong with this marriage between Mason and Victoria. She can't quite put her finger on it. So maybe when the pregnancy is revealed, she'll realize what it was, but the question will be, will she buy that it's Mason's baby right from the get-go? Keith returns from the failed meeting with Dr. Kramer, but he has traced the call, and it came from a Dr. Charles Marcus, a friend of Cece's. So he is thinking that this might be part of some trick. Gina, of course, is upset at having been arrested and files a complaint. She says, Keith, what if they'd asked me to submit to a strip search? And Keith says, I'm surprised you didn't request it. While Keith continues to rant about Cece, Gina spots his computer, boots it up, and starts the process of transferring more funds. But finally, Keith spots what's going on behind his back and pulls the plug. She says, it was just getting warmed up. I didn't know computers needed to warm up that much. Maybe Maybe the writers are thinking about TV sets, which did take a while to warm up. But the cathode ray tube shouldn't take that long to warm up in the monitor. Maybe that's what they were talking about. Cruz and Eden tell Sophia and Cece about Dr. Charles Marcus setting up a meeting with Kelly in the chapel at USB. Then Cece gets the idea to ask Mason to move his wedding to tonight in the chapel. Mason is at first reticent, but agrees to ask Victoria and leave it up to her. Victoria agrees, but they are still planning to go to Carmel tomorrow for the real wedding. So this is just going to be for the family wedding. So I don't know what makes it not real, if the priest won't be real, or will just be a stand-in, or what the...
Or they won't have the marriage license signed? I don't know.
I guess we'll see, because we only see a portion of that in this episode. Rosa! Hey, we haven't seen her in so long. Tells Ted and Haley, hey, your whole family's at a wedding! Get dressed and get out of here. Because they've been hanging out with Jake all day. So they'll probably show up at the wedding smelling like horses. Eden gives Victoria her grandmother's necklace to wear.
Nice gesture.
Oh, did I tell you there's been a thunderstorm going on through this whole episode? And the thunderstorm continues as Keith and Gina arrive at the chapel. As they are sure it's another trick of the Capwells. The ceremony begins, and Keith has to stop Gina from speaking up when the minister asks if anyone objects. But before it goes very far, Victoria suddenly runs out of the chapel shouting, I just can't. So I don't know if this is real or if this is part of the trick. And that's why it's not the real wedding, because the trick is to distract Keith somehow with Victoria running out or something.
Well, Victoria, we know, is going to do a performance related to this, and she did give a little sample of her acting chops earlier in the episode where she pretends to be very upset about something, but actually isn't. So this might fall into the performance category, I think.
I had thought it was just going to be, that it's just to pretend not to know Kelly and Jeffrey are, in the underneath the chapel or whatever it's called, the alcove or whatever. But yeah, it could be that this is a whole big thing, and they've got to get both Keith and Gina into a different room from the Capwells so that Kelly can meet them. I don't know. Maybe they'll seal off that room somehow for a while. Anyway, that's the end of the episode, so we'll find out tomorrow whether Kelly can finally hug her family again. And if Gina will ever get to steal more of Cece's money. I got a feeling they wouldn't want to, the writers wouldn't want to send Gina to jail. So I feel like she's going to skate by on this somehow. Unless, as we thought earlier, they end up trading it for the tape. So. And piano furnished by Schaefer & Sons, as always. And that is it for this Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we watch episode 656 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Well, you sound like you went to a concentration camp.
It was very degrading. What if they'd asked me to submit to a strip search?
I'm surprised you didn't insist on it yourself.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 656 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, February 25th, 1987. Gus tries to talk Alice into talking to Carolyn. Alice is not yet ready to do that. I think Alice needs to have a good talk with Jane, I think. That would be the best
I think so, too. Yeah.
conversation to see. Carolyn tells Lionel that her abusive ex was a heavy drinker, and Carolyn started drinking too to keep him company and to sort of numb the pain. By the time the hospital called her about Alice, she was a drunk too. And she was already fighting the welfare department to be allowed to keep Jane, and she knew there was no way she could petition them to take custody of Alice as well. So I think now we have the full story, and then really now Carolyn's looking like the person who did the right thing here, at least at first, if not for all those years that Alice was in the hospital.
Yeah, and again, it would be really nice to get a little bit more of Jane's perspective on this as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she might remember that guy, that drunk guy.
Yeah.
Right? And we say, yeah, you're lucky you didn't live with us. As Ted and Haley race out the door, they tell Julia that Mason's wedding is happening right now. Julia tells Lionel she's going to go to that wedding and maybe catch the bouquet. At the wedding, Julia finds out from Sophia that the wedding is fake. But then, Mason tells her, no, I think it's Victoria. Victoria tells her the real wedding is tomorrow. So quite a roller coaster ride for Julia in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Cece tells Sophia that Gina will take the bait tomorrow and they'll have her in jail. Heard that before. One by one, the Capwell family visits Kelly and Jeffrey under the pretense of trying to talk Victoria into returning to the ceremony. As Keith paces in the chapel, trying to figure out what the plan is.
And this part of the episode is actually filmed in a really interesting way that I'm not sure we've really seen before in this show. A lot of it is actually filmed from Keith Timmons' perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a really interesting thing that they suddenly did in one scene, and yeah, it was very unique. So, Jeffrey and Kelly are dressed in duplicates of Mason and Julia's clothes. Mason and Victoria's clothes. Wrong girlfriend. The plan is for them to switch places with the bride and groom after the ceremony as they are heading out to the limo. Everything seems to be according to plan, except Keith has had the priest checked out and finally gets word that it's not a real priest, and he has the place surrounded and locks all the doors. Jeffrey turns off the circuit breaker so all the lights go out, so the only illumination we have is all the lightning going on, because don't forget, there's still a thunderstorm going on. But somehow, Jeffrey and Kelly make it out of the locked building, and I didn't quite catch how they managed to do that. So,
for me, this scene with the weird lighting, and you sort of see flashes of bridal veil, and you don't really know what's going on. It actually was a bit of a callback for me to the scene a few episodes ago where Kelly has a dream about them being caught. And it's also filmed in this very sort of chaotic way that you don't quite know what's going on. So it's kind of interesting. I think in a way, as a viewer of it, you almost wonder if this is what's really happening or not. But apparently it is what really happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was quite chaotic. We have at least 3 different rooms, I think, in this chapel. Although there's a crypt they talk about, so that could be, the staging area that Kelly and Jeffrey were getting changed in. But that's, I believe, underneath the chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a changing room where Victoria got dressed. So, and then I feel like there was a little atrium too that had a door to the exit that was the one that was locked. So. But maybe it was the crypt door that was locked, and they actually went out a different exit. So, yeah. So somehow they make it out of the building, and then we see them later in what looks to me like a greenhouse, maybe. So I don't know if this is going to be some random Santa Barbara resident, or is it the Lockridge greenhouse, or I mean, it's a pretty elaborate set. I feel like they're going to be hunkered down there for a while. And maybe Mr. Abernathy will find them or something in there. Kelly has sprained her ankle during the escape, though, so Jeffrey must carry her over the threshold in her fake wedding dress. So that was kind of a fun little thing the writers threw in. And then Kelly says she's not ready to say goodbye to Jeffrey, since her whole family seemed to welcome him this evening. Please don't go.
It occurred to me that one character missing in all this was Pearl, who we would have thought would be hanging out, by the phone and waiting for any word on Kelly. So I'm not sure whether he's on his way out as a character or other things are brewing for him. But he was not involved in any of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see exactly what Jeffrey's plan is for, clearly Mason at least, when this is all over with. Like, I don't know. I mean, he seemed to not be too happy with Cece. So Pamela is his mother, then maybe he knows that Sophia kind of edged out Pamela somewhat illicitly. So, but like, what kind of plan could there be, to get revenge for that or something? That's I actually don't remember. So this will be interesting to see once they're free. I guess it's not really much he can do, but it seems like Kelly's going to be helpful in welcoming him back into the Capwell, good graces. So he'll have a chance to hang around all those Capwells if he needs that for his plan. And that is it for this episode. A lot of it took place at the wedding. So piano furnished by Schaefer & Sons, and that was it for the short credits. And that's it for the Wednesday episode. So we'll be back after we watch episode 657 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Oh, Kelly, what's happened to us here?
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 657 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, February 26, 1987. A lot of stuff happened in here. Yeah.
Well, I guess it is February sweeps, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, and it's racing towards the end of the sweeps.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's probably why some of the things that happened in this episode happened. Jake wonders why Haley hasn't returned for more riding lessons, and she says she just doesn't want to rock the boat with Ted. Ted tells Haley that Jake has a crush on her. Haley says he was a loner before he met us, and now he has to deal with feelings. Well, we didn't see him doing too good a job dealing with his feelings a couple of times. Brick finds Haley holding Johnny and freaks out about her killing Amy. He visits Amy's grave on what would have been her 27th birthday, I believe he says. And then he returns to Johnny's to yell at Haley and Ted some more.
I actually had sympathy for Brick in this because he seems to be the only one who really gets the sort of import of the fact that this is Amy's birthday. And yes, despite Ted's protestations, Haley did actually kill Amy. So you can see why he's upset.
Yeah, and Brick hasn't, had a lot to do, lately, so it's nice to see Brick doing something on the show. We actually got to see Amy's headstone in this episode. It says Amy Perkins Wallace, February 26th, 1960 to September 12th, 1986. Beloved wife and mother, your beauty will never die. I think that's the most complex headstone we've seen on the show so far.
Yeah.
Next time we see it, it'll probably be simplified like Joe's probably is. Anyway, Brick tells Santana that he's ashamed by what he just did, but he couldn't stop himself. Ted and Haley return home and go to bed. Ted says, I think we've been through the worst. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad tidings, but I've seen this show before. Victoria Gwendolyn Lane has some invitations printed up for her scrapbook, or their scrapbook. Mason, she asked Mason if he's fine marrying a Gwendolyn, and he says, well, you're marrying a Lamont, so she talks him into inviting Cece and Sophia to the real wedding, which is, of course, today, up in Carmel, and they come to the wedding. So it's Mason, Victoria, Cece, Sophia, and the minister. After the ceremony, they head back to Johnny's, who wouldn't, and Victoria doubles over in pain. Nothing like a good whiff of ocean air and oyster smells after a wedding. Yeah. One of the few ways people find out about babies in soap operas is emergency rush to the OR, and potentially. The baby's too young to need a bone marrow transplant, so we probably won't find out about Cruz being the father for a while, but this could be how more people find out about the baby.
Of course, this is also how characters have miscarriages as well.
That's true now that the ceremony is over. Gina overhears CC telling Sophia that stock, Acme, is up 4 points already. Gina tries to talk Keith into borrowing $50,000 from the city treasury. Keith, of course, does not want to have anything to do with that. So when she fails, she returns to the study and boots up that computer. And we get to see a little Gina angel appear on the keyboard, trying to talk her out of it. But the devil Gina does a better job and manages to talk Gina into it. And Gina transfers the money. Cece sees the entries in the computer and tells Sophia that tomorrow Gina will be in jail. Mm-hmm. Now we watched an episode of Another World earlier today from, I think it was December 25th, 1980. And of course, Judith McConnell, who plays Sophia, was playing Miranda Bishop at that time on Another World. And she had a nice scene with District Attorney Zachary Colton that reminded me just a little bit of Gina and Keith. But Zachary has not done anything quite as evil as Keith yet, other than putting our heroine Rachel in jail. And Miranda has not done anything quite as evil as Gina, but she does have her eyes on Mac Corey and potentially his millions. I don't know. I don't know how well-to-do that family is. She's related to Kit Holloway, who is quite wealthy. So
I think every time we watch these old Another World episodes, especially the ones with Miranda, I always comment on how much more satisfying Miranda must have been to play for Judith McConnell than Sophia is, because Miranda's a kind of juicy, villainous character.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia was interesting when she was Dominique, but yeah, she's just kind of always supporting CC now.
Miranda did have a tape that she used to give to the DA to put Rachel in jail, but it was actually the opposite of an exonerating tape, although I believe it was taken out of context. If I remember correctly, it's been a few months since that aired. Actually, it was probably been 10 years since we watched the earlier parts of the story. We're just finally getting around to finishing those Another Worlds that AOL put online, so we've got about another year's worth before we suddenly get the sparse few that appear on YouTube. Keith tells Eden and Cruz that they are under house arrest. Dust off the Monopoly set, he says. Cruz is anxious to get to Johnny's by 5 o'clock to receive Kelly and Jeffrey's phone call that they had prearranged. Kelly and Jeffrey get doused by the greenhouse attendant as he waters the plants they are hiding under. So they have an excuse to do yet another change out of their wedding clothes, and they now find some purple jumpsuits to put on to go with the blue and the orange they've had so far on this little journey of theirs. Kelly finds some food in the refrigerator, but another guy shows up, claiming it's his. Kelly puts on a fake Southern accent, but the guy thinks he knows her. But that actually goes nowhere in this story. This guy is never seen again.
And it actually made me wonder if this was a fake Southern accent, because I believe Robin Wright is actually from Texas.
Yes, I feel like that wasn't a Texas accent, so I'm not sure. Maybe a Texan can tell us for sure, or at least someone who's an expert on Robin Wright's real accent. But I feel like she was putting on a more Southern one than Texas, which is a Western accent. Pearl demands to know what's going on. Mason won't tell him anything.
I feel so clever having mentioned Pearl in our last one.
And I'm actually really happy that Pearl gets a ton of crazy stuff to do in this episode, because he's freaking out at just the thought that him and his beloved Kelly are not together as they should be. Like he said the other day, if only I was the one who had gone on that plane, that would be us on the run right now. So I'm glad that they didn't just let this go by the wayside, that Pearl's getting to live all the beats of this rapidly spiraling out of control relationship with Kelly that is largely in his head. Pearl says, "Kelly, what's happening to us here?" Pearl then says to Santana, "The entire Capwell clan has suddenly got total amnesia about my involvement with Kelly." It's about time they figured out who their friends really are. Jeffrey's call comes in at 5, but Cruz and Eden aren't there to answer it, so Pearl answers the phone and eventually realizes it's Jeffrey on the phone and that this could be his path back to Kelly. Jeffrey insists that he tell no one where they are except Cruz, and he reveals that they are at the greenhouses on the USB campus. So will Pearl be able to resist doing the wrong thing? Pearl disguises himself as a water delivery man in order to give Cruz the information about where Kelly is. Cruz tells him under no circumstances is he to go to the USB greenhouse. Keith, of course, recognizes Pearl dressed up as a delivery man and puts a man on his tail right away. Cruz knocks out the 2 officers guarding them because he just can't take it anymore and takes off for the greenhouse. This is, I think, going to put Cruz in the worst position of all. I think Keith will easily be able to arrest Cruz over this. I somehow feel like, though, that the trade will be for Gina. Because now Gina is, unless another magnet comes into play, now Gina is definitely on the hook. Santana and Pearl talk about Amy and Brick. Pearl realizes that he could lose Kelly forever, just like Brick lost Amy. So he decides not to make the same mistake, and he heads for the greenhouse, followed by Keith's man. He barges in on Kelly and Jeffrey, who are making out after having fed each other a lot of fruit. I think before Pearl's brain can catch up with his mouth on what exactly he's witnessing, a voice comes over the PA system saying, "This is the police! Pearl, Kelly, Jeffrey, come out with your hands up, one at a time." Pearl comes out first, hoping that he's given Kelly and Jeffrey enough time to escape out the back way, but they can't get out that way. So Kelly decides she should just go. But Jeffrey is annoyed when they grab Kelly as she's giving herself up voluntarily. He picks up a pole to strike the officer that grabbed Kelly so roughly. Another officer standing next to Keith Timmons raises his gun and fires it at Jeffrey. Could this be the end for Jeffrey, potentially Mason's half-brother?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, Kelly does have a history of losing boyfriends this way. However, there's so many mysteries about Jeffrey. I feel like if they kill him off now, it's going to be a very long circuitous route to actually uncover those mysteries. So
I feel like the worst that can happen is he could end up in the hospital again.
Yeah. So I feel like, I mean, they've just laid out so many breadcrumbs for us to figure out his ties to the family and to Mason specifically, that I really think we have to have some questions answered before they allow for his demise. Plus, I was hoping for a kind of interesting triangle with Kelly, Jeffrey, and Pearl.
Yeah, I feel like having him hospitalized leads, assuming Kelly gets out of jail, could be a lot of Kelly at the bedside things and Pearl pacing outside, trying to get a chance to talk to Kelly.
And maybe Pearl getting slightly more and more insane, because that's something that often happens to Kelly's boyfriends as well.
That's true. We got a lot of angry men on the show today. We got Jake, we got Pearl, we got Brick. So one of them could snap at any minute. And it still sweeps, so don't want to wait 3 months for one of them to snap. Piano furnished by Schaefer and Sons. That is the end of a Thursday episode. That was not only a lot, but a lot of Friday energy. But they're not a day ahead; they're a day behind. So I feel like we may get a good, even bigger Friday episode tomorrow. I trust Kelly is not going to get out of those handcuffs again. I think with Gina, having done the transfer, this is going to be it, and this is going to be Cece will just have to trade Gina and Keith for Kelly and the tape. That's, I think, what's going to happen. But of all the things that I remember happening in early '87, this is not one of them. The only thing I remember is something about Jake. That's all I actually remember from this whole next few months. So we'll see what memorable things happen when we watch episode 658 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I'm talking about marriage. I'm talking about commitment. I'm talking about everything that goes along with
Look, for better or worse. Well, I think we've been through the worst.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 658 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, February 27th, 1987. It's the last day of February. Sweeps. I don't know if they'll continue on into March, but we had an exciting episode. Last night we watched It Takes a Thief, and Martine Beswick was in it. She, of course, played the assassin a couple of years ago. Kelly is arrested and put in jail. Jeffrey is shot and taken to the hospital. Keith is very gleeful about all of this. Gina is also very gleeful about her investment. She buys drinks for everyone at Johnny's. Jake thanks her and she flirts with him. Could we see a potential Jake and Gina pairing coming up? Mason has taken Victoria to the hospital after she doubled over last night. The doctor tells her that she and Mason can't make love for the rest of her pregnancy. I don't think they've slept together yet, have they? So this could be a bit of a delay.
Obviously a delayed honeymoon at the very least.
Julia congratulates him on his wedding. Jeffrey is wheeled in past Mason, and that's how the family finds out what's going on. When the family arrives, Mason reports that the bullet has passed right through Jeffrey. Cece doesn't want Haley there because he doesn't want anything to go wrong with their plan against Gina. A nurse notices that Jeffrey's ring has fallen from his pocket, and she puts it on his bedside table. Sophia sits with him, but she does not see the ring. Jeffrey regains consciousness and retrieves his ring, and then he stumbles up and calls the jail, pretending to be Kelly's lawyer, and manages to talk to her before the matron realizes that Kelly's not very lawyer-like conversation with Jeffrey. Seems to be a bit too personal. Cece gives the evidence of Gina's embezzlement to a trustworthy assistant DA. He tells Keith to arrest Gina immediately. Keith has no choice but to arrest her. Cece tells her that she can have her freedom in exchange for the tape. Gina doubles down and says she can do 10 years in prison, but Kelly will still be there long after Gina's been released. So Cece decides to see how long she'll hold out. Gina is put in a cell across from Kelly. Kelly stares at her. We've got two little jail cells in this jail set. Haley goes to Johnny's. She sees Jake there with two women and at first decides to leave, but changes her mind and returns. Jake is drunk and ranting about Kelly and the Capwells and Ted getting his job. He grabs Haley for a dance, but won't take no for an answer. Brick hears Haley's cry of pain and pulls Jake off of Haley. Jake punches Brick, but Brick pins him against the wall, takes his car keys, and forces him to leave. Jake gets a bottle of liquor from somewhere and finishes it off while wandering the beach and shouting at the world. He ends up throwing the bottle into the sea, I believe.
And we actually do get a nice little scene with Haley and Brick after this.
Brick does apologize to Haley for what he said earlier, and he talks about it being Amy's birthday and how on the last birthday Amy didn't want anything for herself, just to take Johnny to the zoo. And then Brick breaks down a bit while talking to Haley and rushes out, telling the bartender he's leaving for the night. And we see a waitress there, I think, for... it was not Alice, it's some waitress we've never seen wearing the red vest of the staff. Ted shows up at Johnny's, this is much later, looking for Haley, And Julia is the only one left there, other than that waitress. The waitress says, everyone's gone. Haley's gone, Brick's gone, the bartender's gone. There's just Julia, Ted, and that waitress in the bar. Haley is walking along the shore and gets frightened when she realizes someone is following her. We see a man wearing cowboy boots follow her, no matter which way she turns. As Haley starts to panic, the man grabs her from behind. So I think this is not the start of a good storyline for Haley.
No, and I mean, my number one suspect would be Jake, but it could also be pinned on Brick, I suppose, since he and Haley had words earlier in the bar before he rescued her.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of ways this could go, or it could be something completely different. But the cowboy boots kind of indicate someone who maybe works with horses and in a barn.
Mm-hmm. I was trying to think if there's any minor characters who it could be. The only new one we have is that bartender at Johnny's. And, you know, he has gone home, so that's a potential. Of course, Pearl's not in a good mood, and we have no idea where he is. So
I'm feeling like any issues with Pearl will be directed more in the Kelly and Jeffrey direction.
that would make sense at this time.
But, if something does happen to Haley, or if this spins out into a longer storyline, that could be an impetus for Gina to want to get out of jail to help with the situation.
That's a really good point, yeah. And that's it for this episode. Piano furnished by Schaefer & Sons is the only noteworthy thing in the credits. And that's it for week 135. We will see what happens to Haley next week, 136, when we return after episode 659. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
How come all the Capwell men have this thing for dumpy actresses?